Self-love is something everyone talks about these days, but is that really a Christian virtue? Well, let's see what the Bible says. Hey guys, welcome back to KingdomCraft. So in the last episode, I built some of the interior structure of what's going to be my big stained glass windows, and I want to make some andesite for the edges, but I'm in a part of this Minecraft server that was generated literally before the 1.8 update, so there's no andesite in this part of the world, so I have to take a train to a different part of the world so I can get some andesite. So yeah, I am not the only one in this server, of course. There are a bunch of people on the server, which will explain why you see certain things, why you see certain flags that I would most certainly not put up, because yeah, so this is a very big server. It's been taken over by atheists, and when I say atheists, I mean, non-religious people. Not all of them are explicitly atheist, but, a lot of them believe in ideologies like, self-love and self-acceptance, and they talk about it all the time. And the reason I made this series is because I want to spread God's kingdom in Minecraft by basically bringing Christianity to this Minecraft server. So yeah, I'm going to take the train, and I'm going to go to a different part of the world. And this is actually a really cool server. It was generated when there were mods in the world. So today I'm going to be... am I going to make it now? Today I'm going to be talking about self-love, basically. I could have done this, yeah. I'm going to be talking about self-love. And, is it a Christian virtue? Why does it get treated like such a virtue? And other stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm going to take this train while I talk about it, and then I'm going to go on a bit of a mining trip. So, we should keep in mind, what does the Bible say about self-love? What has the church historically taught about self-love? What have, the saints taught? What do our confessions say? So our confessions don't really say anything. Our confessions deal with a lot more, esoteric theological issues than, practical issues for how you should live your life. Which, I get it, because how you should live your life is a lot more subjective. But, it's definitely true. The Bible, I think, is pretty clear on self-love. The Bible only explicitly uses the phrase self-love or love of self once, and it's in a negative light. It's in, I forget, it's one of Paul's letters where he's like, oh, in the last days there will be terrible things, and one of the things he lists is, there will be lovers of self. It's not listed as a positive thing. Now, it's often said that, oh, Jesus said you have to love your neighbor as yourself, so before you can do that, you have to love yourself. And that is I think, a horrible misreading of the text. Jesus basically assumes everyone already does love themselves. And if you think you don't, well, guess what? You do. Love does not mean, in a traditional sense, love does not mean, like, warm and fuzzy feelings. All it really means is willing the good of, the thing you love. And everyone wills their own good. It's in our very nature, and if you don't believe that, then you have to read what the Bible says about human selfishness. So love is basically just caring about and willing the good of something, and self-love is really just caring about yourself. So the Bible doesn't say you must hate yourself. The thing the Bible prescribes is not self-hatred; it's sort of self-denial. Everyone naturally cares about themselves. It's what themselves is not a word. Everyone naturally cares about themselves. It's what we evolved to do. And the Bible doesn't say you need to stop doing that. The Bible says you need to care about others as much as you care about yourself. Everyone cares about themselves. And because our hearts are wicked naturally, well, not naturally, God didn't make us that way, but we've fallen into a state of wickedness. Because our hearts are in a state of wickedness, we will gravitate all the time towards loving ourselves. I keep using bad grammar. So the Bible tells us, you have to always be thinking, how can I love myself less and love others more? And a lot of modern, mental health rhetoric really promotes selfishness. They say, it's time to don't apologize for putting yourself first. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible never ever tells anyone to put themselves first. It always tells people to be selfless and put others before themselves. And, some will say, oh, well, everything in moderation. You don't put the commands of God in moderation. Our culture is obsessed with selfishness, and it's a pretty modern thing that people are so obsessed with, making yourself happy, putting yourself first, putting your own needs. How about caring about other people? And honestly, I think, it might be one of the many reasons why our culture is so depressed these days. It's because everyone's just focused on themselves when that's not what we evolved to do. We evolved to be like social beings and to always have others in mind. And if you're preoccupied with yourself all the time, of course you're going to be miserable, because what you'll be concerned about is your own satisfaction and not the satisfaction of others. So yeah, self-love is, in my opinion, totally and completely anti-Christian doctrine. I think most mental health rhetoric these days that we hear is really bad and really unchristian, because it just centers around selfishness and self-obsession. So yeah, the Bible does not endorse self-love at all in any way. And if we look at the lives of the saints, they were marked by a profound selflessness. I heard this one story of this one saint. I forget who it was. He lived in like the 700s or 800s or something. Basically, what he would do is he became a laborer. So he would like work every day for money, and each night he would hire a prostitute. But instead of doing stuff with that prostitute, he would basically tell her, he would pay her and say, I'm here to buy you one night without sin. So he would basically pay her to like not sleep with her and convince her to change her lifestyle, and he would get her like arranged with some sort of a monastery so she could become like a nun and be freed from her like sinful lifestyle. And the thing is, he wasn't bragging about what he was doing. He wasn't telling everybody, hey, look at how I'm helping all these other people. A lot of people assumed that he was, hiring these prostitutes to sleep with them. Everyone assumed that. So he let himself be humiliated just for the sake of helping others. So he would work hard and he would pay for all these prostitutes, and he was humiliated in the process, but what he was really doing was helping them. And it wasn't revealed what he was doing until his funeral, when all the prostitutes whom he had freed wept over his grave and said what he had done for them. So yeah, it wasn't until that people even knew like how noble the stuff was that he did. So yeah, if we study the lives of the saints, people like him, that is how we know what Christian love is like. It has nothing to do with self-love. It's in many ways, and in most cases, quite the opposite, I would say. So yeah, that's why I think the rhetoric of self-love and, self-care and mental health is very dangerous. On Instagram, there's this really, really funny... Okay, yes, here's what I'm looking for, andesite. On Instagram, there's this really funny page called Power of Self-Care. It's really a satire of mental health accounts. It says stuff like, fight the urge to be a people pleaser. No one should be pleased when you're around. It's really funny. I highly recommend it. You should follow them. And yes, that deserves to be ridiculed. I'm under the firm conviction that stuff that is bad should be ridiculed. I don't think it's unchristian in any way to ridicule that which is actually harmful. So I do believe the mental health movement, and when I say the mental health movement, I'm not talking about any form of, mental health awareness. Like, of course there are real things. There's real depression, there's real anxiety. I'm talking about the mental health movement that basically uses these things as an excuse for sin, that basically romanticizes these things to convince other people that they have it, and basically reduces mental health just to the physical and the psychological, and never admits that there could be any sort of moral and spiritual component to it. Now, I don't believe we should over-spiritualize mental health, but we also shouldn't under-spiritualize mental health, because the mind is both brain and soul. So with everything involving the mind, there's some spiritual component. Now, it's not all that. There are neurological things like schizophrenia, where what you need is not an exorcism, what you need is drugs. I know this psychiatrist who he's actually world famous. He's like, his name's Richard Gallagher. You can look him up. If you look up demonic possession, his name will come up. And I know him. He is someone that the Catholic... He's not an exorcist himself. He's a regular psychiatrist, a man of science. He's someone that the Catholic Church hires to determine if someone that they think might be possessed is actually possessed, or if they just have a mental illness. Because unlike what a lot of people assume, the Catholic Church actually is very careful about correctly diagnosing demonic possession, and they don't want to prescribe an exorcism when someone just has a mental illness. So this psychiatrist, Richard Gallagher, says, 99% of the time, what someone has really is a mental illness. Like, most commonly it's schizophrenia when they're dealing with things that look like demon possession, but there always is that 1% of the time where they really are demonically possessed. He's seen people doing things that, no one normally would be able to do, like speaking in a language they don't know or having super strength or stuff like that. And a lot of Christians either overemphasize the demonic and act like there are demons around every corner, or underemphasize it and basically deny that it's there altogether. And look, if you're a strict atheist, if you're a strict, materialist, and you think the supernatural's not real, of course you'll be able to think of some explanation for anything. But there are reliable testimonies of supernatural things taking place that's really hard to explain away. There are many stories of a bunch of people witnessing about the same stuff. And, of course, the satanic panic, which happened, like, a few decades ago, was sort of like the boy who cried demon. So now, because people were making up stuff to, get some attention, now no one takes it seriously when it actually happens. But, yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent. I went from self-love to demonic possession. But really, I think that self-love and some mental health rhetoric might be something that, dark spirits use, because a lot of girls who are... Well, I say girls because most people, let's be honest, most people posting, mental health quotes are girls. I think men and women have a tendency, rather, to struggle with different sins. Like, the sins that men often struggle with are pornography. Men struggle with porn more than women. I'm not denying that women struggle with it, but men are more likely to have a crippling addiction. I say more likely because it does happen to women too. For women are more likely to turn mental health into an idol and a means of self-obsession. And of course, demons always want us to be prideful and self-obsessed, and they'll use anything they can in order to do it. Now, I often see there is a correlation between three things. There are some, girls I know in my generation, I'm a Zoomer, that's part of my title, Gen Z. Has been a resurgence of witchcraft. Like, girls that actually self-identify as witches. It's not like some witch hunt. It's not like some accusation. They self-identify as witches, and they do things like, reading tarot cards and stuff. And I think that stuff is fake at best, but it's a lot worse when it's real, because, of course, I don't believe witches have any magical powers, but I do believe that demons will work through that to convince them they have magic powers, and because of that, demons will just use that as a pathway to get people to literally worship them, and witchcraft is usually how people get demonically possessed in the rare cases when it does happen. So I do see a correlation between that kind of stuff and self-love. Now, that is an extreme example. It's like not everyone who talks about self-love engages in witchcraft, but everyone who engages in witchcraft talks a lot about self-love, because the demons want us to love ourselves. The demons want us to think about ourselves over others, because ultimately the biggest threat to our eternal destiny is our own pride. It's why I talked about in my last episode. The reason why the Jews rejected their own Messiah is because they pridefully believed they deserved, salvation from their, political struggles, because they thought they had obeyed the law well enough. But the purpose of the law was not to make people prideful. It was to show people how dead in sin they were. That's why God's law existed. So, that's why I think pride. Now, some people say, pride is at the root of all sin. I wouldn't quite say that. I would say I like what the famous pastor Tim Keller says, that pride is the carbon monoxide of sins, because it's the one sin that you will never be aware that you're committing, at least while you're committing it. It's like Tim Keller jokes, like no one like is in the middle of committing adultery and say like, "Oh my gosh, you're not my wife." No one does that. But with pride, it's like, because pride clouds your self-evaluation, you're not it's a sin that you're not going to realize you're committing it in the moment. And if someone tries to correct you as like, a helpful brother, you're just going to get defensive. So yeah, self-love, I really don't see how self-love could not lead to pride. And it's like, yes, you're not supposed to hate yourself either, but the antidote to self-hatred isn't self-love, it's just self-denial. Like, one of my absolute favorite C.S. Lewis quotes is that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So, yeah, that's why I really don't see any good use of self-love. It may make you feel better in the moment, but like a drug, it causes you to need more of it. So, if that's something you're into, my best advice to you would be to try to, not engage in that sort of rhetoric. So, yeah, that's basically all I have to say about self-love and, stuff like that, stuff of that sort. I've mined a lot of andesite, so now I'm going to go back to the church and place it around the windows, so I'm going to speed it up while I do that.